Welcome to the Savvy Sauce, where we have practical chats for intentional living. I'm your host, Laura Duggar, and I'm so glad you're here. Lehman Property Management Company has the apartment you will be able to call home, with over 1,700 apartment units available in Central Illinois. Visit them today at lehmanproperties.com or connect with them on Facebook. Y'all, I don't even have enough words to adequately describe this conversation with my dear guest, Erin Loechner. Erin left her career as a six-figure influencer with over 1 million fans to instead pursue a more abundant and fulfilling life offline. And now in her latest book, The Opt-Out Family, Erin is full of brilliant ways to maximize the online algorithms within our homes to spark connection and delight in our family, all without tech. She is generally just a delightful human, and she's going to share stories and tips and inspirations with all of us now. Here's our chat. Welcome to the Savvy Sauce, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, some may say that you're kind of an unlikely author for this book about tech-free living. So can you explain a bit about your background and your journey toward eventually becoming an opt-out family?
Yes, you are right. Some would be correct. I am an unlikely author for this book. I was a social media influencer with 1 million followers. I started very early on hosting a show on hgtv.com and pre-social media, and then things kind of dovetailed from there. And I found that I had this platform, and what was I going to do with it? And the more that I sort of navigated the tension of living a very online life with coming into parenting my own children, I just recognized, if I continue this influencer lifestyle, it is fairly all encompassing. Your job is to kind of capture your life, and whether that means behind the scenes or in sort of earmarked days. I know as an influencer myself, I was very boundaried in terms of my children appearing online. I didn't share their faces online. I didn't share their names online. And I was very careful about the types of things that I would talk about. And yet there was that reality that I was parenting with my phone in my hand a lot more than I was comfortable with, especially knowing we were not going to encourage social media for our children. And it just felt like, as parents, kids can smell hypocrisy a mile away. And it felt like one of those moments where I had to decide, am I serious about this? Am I going to recommend that my children steer clear from this platform that I've built a career on? And truly, I was just not willing to sacrifice their trust and their respect for me as a person when it came time to make that call. Now, all of this was so earlier than this was even a conversation. My oldest was probably 4 or 5 when I started to pull back. But, you kind of look at the long term and you think, I want to start now to become the kind of person that I know I'll need to be as a parent in that season. So my husband and I, he worked in Apple's ad agency. I knew the algorithm very, very well. And so we just knew we're not willing to do this anymore. And if it's not good for kids, it's actually not that great for adults either. And so we just, cut ties, and I found sort of a new way to work and live. And honestly, really, truly, the heart of this book is just for the people who are curious. Can I opt out? What does it look like? How do I do it? Because I was really growing weary of the narrative that tech is a necessary evil or that social media is a necessary evil. I wanted to explore, what does it look like to live without it? Is it possible? I'm here to say yes. Is it realistic? Is it abundant? Is it fruitful? Yes, yes, yes. And that's really what this book was about.
Incredible. And I want to zero in just on a few things that you said. First, when you said capture your life. What really struck me is that when we capture a human to put them in prison, it just makes me think of bondage or enslavement language. And so not that this is true for everyone, but to be cautious of that lifestyle that could kind of have invisible handcuffs around us. And it's escaping me now, the second point, but something similar to that. Just your language is really rich. And you ended up canceling yourself and wisely modeling this for your children. Oh, it was when you said it's not a necessary evil. Even those words, as we're sisters in Christ, we would agree nothing that's evil is necessary. And so I love how you worded that. But
that's great points. Yes, great points.
Well, and just real quick, could you give us a definition of opt-out family and share why it might be of interest for us to consider that within our own homes?
Yeah, of course. A big pillar of an opt-out family is just there are no personal devices really out and about. No one, when you have the picture of the living room where everybody's on their individual things, we share tech usage. We share both the device itself and also what's happening on the device itself. So when I talk about shared tech usage, it involves many, many conversations, including also sharing the physical device as well. But it's a wide spectrum. I believe that parents are made up of many, many different strengths and variables and principles and callings. And so for us, what it looks like is I walk around the world with just a dumb phone. I have no internet access, no email on my phone. I can call and I can send texts. And I can occasionally use maps, but usually I'm printing off directions. So what that does for us as a family, and this is just our version of what it looks like, but what it does is it helps me move through the world alongside of my kids so that we're sort of encountering that friction together so that, by the time they get to a point where they would like to purchase their own smartphone or their own device, I hope maybe it'll be a smartphone, maybe it won't. But when they can sort of afford the financial and emotional cost of that, and they have to make that choice, what kind of phone do I want? I don't want their choice to hinge on the fact that they haven't seen it modeled any other way. So my job is really to encounter those pain points and this tension. How do we board a flight without an iPhone? How do you dine at a place where there's only QR code menus? We have encountered some of these things, and I'm helping my kids learn that it's not as crazy as it sounds, and it's not as difficult as it sounds. There's some tension, but all of that tension is very it's easy to navigate, really, and the benefits are better on the other side. So that's really what an opt-out family looks like for us.
That's helpful clarification. And I love how you write that some families may not choose to go completely screen-free in their home, but if that seems too big or overwhelming, if they would even want to move in the direction of choosing to reject the use of personal devices. So there's such an umbrella of grace that you offer in just sharing your own story and examples. But I want to get to some of your ideas for opting out of technology in lieu of opting into something better. But first, I'm hoping you'll set the stage. So especially for us who are parents, what are some motives of the big tech companies that may be capitalizing on our naivety?
Yeah. The big ones, and I'm so grateful that the research is out there. And most of this will probably not be new to your listeners, but time and attention were really kind of the really big pushes in the beginning. These platforms work on advertising dollars. And so the longer that you are on the device, the longer you have ads displayed to you, the more likely you are to purchase, the more repetitive times that these are appearing in front of you, the more likely you are to purchase. And yet there was a shift, and a lot of this came out while I was researching this book. The shift moved from the attention economy to, and I credit this phrase to Tristan Harris, who is just a wonderful resource in many, many ways, Center for Humane and Technology. But the shift happened from the attention economy to the intimacy economy. And so now it's less about, we just want your time. And now it's, we want your trust. We want your companionship. We want to mentor and guide your decision-making skills. And a lot of that, we see that play out in AI right now. ChatGPT-3, it's made it so much easier to shape the way we use our words and the way that we talk about things. And one of the things I write about in the book is a new AI development called Replica, where you can kind of create an imaginary friend for yourself that gives you whatever advice that they think you need to hear. And it's wild that we're in this spot that I think that most of us 20 years ago thought was so far down the horizon, but we're there, we're in the thick of it. And it's hard to see because it's kind of couched in this everyday thing that's in everybody's pockets. So it feels very harmless. It feels very accepted, and it should give us a lot of pause.
A lot of pause indeed. And you did such thorough research for your book. So I want to highlight just a few things. You credit Fowler. This is on page 21, and your quote is, "Their algorithms optimize for eliciting a reaction from us, ignoring the fact that often the shortest path to a click is fear, anger, or sadness."
Mm.
And then one other on page 82, you also give credit to Fair Play. Under a pretense of teaching math, Prodigy is using schools to access and manipulate a lucrative child market. So can you expand on any of that? That was news to me, that the technology in the schools is preying on our children and on their privacy, really.
Really, yes. The data is a whole nother, that's kind of, there's so many sort of boxes in this, but data infringement for children. I don't remember the statistics. It's something that it's a wild number of data points that these tech companies have before your child turns 13. It's in the millions. And just the very concept that a third-party company, especially a third-party company that has been sold as sort of a necessity for us, right? We think of ed tech, we think of iPads and the one-to-one program in every kid's backpack, and how that was championed, in the early 2000s as this thing that was going to create a better future for us. And what has happened is we have created a better future for the tech companies, for Silicon Valley, but at the cost of our children and at the cost of their privacy. And you hear a lot of times the argument that, well, what does it matter? What do they have? I'm not hiding anything, so it doesn't matter. But I think when it comes to our children, they do have the right to have a small digital footprint. They should have the privilege, knowing that by the time that they age, identity theft has the statistics. I mean, you watch the curve just go up and up and up, and identity theft is such a huge factor for our generation, certainly, but it's going to be the bigger risk for the next generation. And it's all there. How many times a week do we get an email that the latest thing has been hacked and all of our social security numbers have been stolen? And I think that we've normalized that so deeply as a society as just another kind of pitfall of tech. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so opting out really does protect your child from a lot of what will cause greater benefits when they're, 24, 25, 26 and beyond.
Well, and just to continue that conversation too, in the schools, this may be an ignorant comment, but it just grieves me so much that schools, like you mentioned, the one-to-one, where they want every child to have access to an iPad. And I just think when we look at all research, there's nothing positive. You even ask a question in your book and say, why do we choose to hand today's top addiction to our kids? And I am floored that they're still in our schools. and would love for them to be out. But I think also just a few more sobering questions that you ask for us to consider. I'll just quote you from page 4. You say, "And why are we, as full-grown adults, sitting on the bathroom floor watching TikTok content while our toddlers play alone one room over?" That was heartbreaking. And then just a really good accountability question, asking yourself, would I want my child to use technology the same way I do?
Yeah. And, that's really the heart of this book is, how do we build a life? We've all been there, right? We've all felt like we need to take the emotional health book or breaks in the laundry room or the bathroom or whatever. I don't know that it's healthy to bring our phone along with us, but still, I think that the question is how do we build a life that we don't need to escape from? That's what I'm more interested in. It's less about the distraction of the device. It's actually less about saying no to the device for kids and for us ourselves, and more about how do we integrate something different? How do we say yes to something better than the device? And that's really where I wanted to go with this book, kind of picking apart what makes these devices so addictive and how can we put some of those mechanisms and really, a lot are rooted in childhood development. If you talk to a lot of algorithm engineers and programmers, they know quite a lot about human development and know quite a lot about childhood development. And so these things seem very basic, but they work on the phone. And so this book is a bit of a call to returning to make them work off of the phone just as much.
Well, let's go there because you've extensively studied what the online algorithm capitalizes on as it tries to promise connection to users, but then can end up producing addiction and loneliness. So I love when you flip all of that upside down in your book and you write about ways to borrow the good tips and tricks from the algorithm to instead make connections within our home and our community, but still all without the use of a screen. And that does lead to true connection and delight. So can you share some ways we can do this too?
Of course. One of my favorite ways, I always start with this one. It's just really impactful. It's called strewing. It's an educational term. But the idea is just that you are sort of offering an experience to your child that they wouldn't have stumbled across themselves. So you are inviting your child into maybe it's an activity, maybe it's just the exploration of an object. In my home, I keep a coffee table open where there's something new and exciting to encounter for the fair point, probably 3 to 5 times a week, right? Maybe it's just a couple library books I found that I thought would spark their interest that I set aside for a rainy day. Maybe it's, junk mail and scissors for the little ones to craft with. Maybe it is, your old yearbook or family photos for them to flip through and laugh at how weird everyone looked in your day and age. There are a number of things to encounter, mostly free, but the idea is just inviting your child to an experience. And TikTok does this, right? As soon as you log into the app, you are met with images and videos and something that is new to you. It's called the For You page, something that has been curated that the algorithm believes will delight you. And I think we as parents can do that so much better because we know our kids. We know so much about what makes them tick. And we know we can really hone in and zero in on those interests in a way that the algorithm actually can't quite yet. So that's a really big one. It's just kind of bringing your home into this place of exploration and curiosity and delight. Physical touch is a huge way that the algorithm tries but cannot replicate. Eye contact. A lot of the book talks about, biometrics in terms of social media platforms and how they can kind of track your eye patterns and what is interesting to you and what is not interesting to you. Well, so can we too as parents. challenges, introducing your child to a challenge that isn't so demotivating that they want to give up, but that is hard and difficult, that teaches and expands resilience. I interviewed Minecraft designers on how do you find that balance between a demotivating challenge, right? Or something that gives just the right amount of momentum to keep a child going. And almost everyone talked about the reward system. And while I don't believe that our home has to be nonstop reward charts and gamification, I do think we know our children, and we know when they are just in need of a break. We know when they're in need of a gentle touch. And can I help you with this? And I'm really proud to see how you're doing this. Are you proud of this? And, all of those moments that we can sort of platform our kids, and just let them know we're paying attention. Let them know that they play an integral role in the family, and that we do have expectations as a family unit, but also that they're their own person. And it's recognizing that is what is so sticky and addictive about a personal device. It feels like it knows you. And my challenge to parents is to have your child say the same about you.
Let's take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor. With over 1,700 apartment units available throughout Pekin, Peoria Heights, Morton, Washington, and Canton, and with every price range covered, you will have plenty of options when you rent through Lehman Property Management Company. They have townhomes, duplexes, studios, and garden-style options located in many areas throughout Pekin. In Peoria, a historic downtown location and apartments adjacent to the OSF Medical Center provide excellent choices. Check out their brand new luxury property in Peoria Heights overlooking the boutique shops and fine dining on Prospect. And in Morton, they offer a variety of apartment homes with garages, a hot downtown location, and now a brand new high-end complex near Idlewood Park. Their beautiful, spacious apartments with private garages in a quiet but convenient location await you in Washington. And if you're looking in Canton, don't miss Village Square Apartments. Renters may be excited to learn about their flexible leases, pet-friendly locations, and even mini storage units available in some locations. Lehman Property Management Company has a knowledgeable and helpful staff, including several employees with over 30 years working with this reputable company. If you want to become a part of their team, contact them about open office positions. They're also hiring in their maintenance department, so we invite you to find out why so many people have chosen to make a career with them. Check them out on Facebook today or email their friendly staff at leasing@lehmanprops.com. You can also stop by their website at lehmanproperties.com. That's LEMAN properties.com. Check them out and find your place to call home today. I'm going to zero in on two things when you talked about not always needing rewards and gamification, but in a positive way. I believe you've been on their podcast before, and Joey Odom has come on ours, the founder of RO, or co-founder. And that's a great way if you do have phones in the home already. It's just ARO. If you look up RO, that is a gamification system in reverse to reward you from spending time away from your phone and kind of breaking or changing that relationship. But then how you also said about physical touch, I love how you quote an author and family therapist, Virginia Satir, who said, "We need 4 hugs a day for survival. We need 8 hugs a day for maintenance. We need 12 hugs a day for growth." And even mentioning the physical touch or the eye contact and the oxytocin and positive neurochemicals that go through our body through our relationship with our children is really great. Are there any other practical tips you have for capitalizing on the algorithm in our home?
Yes. And I will also just piggyback on what you said. This was a really interesting study that I read. Oxytocin is actually, it will get sort of deployed in your body when you hear the voice of someone you love. So practically speaking to, parents where their children might not be in the home and they rely heavily on text to connect with them if their child is in college or if they're raising adults, or I would consider, if a phone call is not sufficient, or if a phone call is really hard to manage with time zones and all of that, just sending an audio message is a really very practical tip to bring that connection further in a way that that positively reinforces, like that relationship. So aim for audio message over text anytime if you can.
Oh, that's good. And I love another piece of research that you call out is that surprise is still probably the most powerful tool of all. So I'll list that one and a couple others, and I'd love for you to share your thoughts. So the element of surprise, bringing that into our home. Also, the invitation to play, or the simple task of reading aloud and inviting community. Would you like to elaborate on any of those?
Yes. All of those, I think, very effective when you put everything into play in your home. But one of the things that we've done is I always tell our community I'm much better at answering the door than answering my phone. So we have always had an open door policy. Everyone can come in. We're kind of the low-tech hangout for our neighborhood. Friends can come over. It's messier, it's louder, but we do have to kind of, if we're sort of unwilling to foster this connection online between our children and their friends, we have to give a little bit, and we have to give up some of the comforts in our own home. And so for us, that looks like, honestly, kids will just come in and out, teens will come in and out, and we feed them and we invite them into whatever's happening at the moment. We'll throw a bonfire or go for walks, or really whatever that moment calls for. But fostering community is probably going to be the biggest aid in terms of fighting tech in the long run. Is we do need each other. We need each other's support. We need many, many people for our kids to look to be able to point to and say, well, they didn't have a smartphone around when I talked to them, or they never interrupt me when I'm talking, or they're not checked out and looking at something else when we're in the middle of a conversation, or they don't even have a device. Any of those things, the more that our kids can see that and experience that and feel how that feels, the more they'll be drawn to it, because we all know how it feels to be ignored for a device. It doesn't feel good. And the idea is to keep that from being the norm. They get it a lot elsewhere in the world. So if we can sort of minimize that through our community and the people that we choose as role models for our kids and the people that we bring into their lives, then the better.
And also, what are some examples of ways that you and your husband have just done little memorable surprises with your kids?
I feel like we're always just dreaming up some little side things, and they can be very simple. One of the best examples was from a mother who had shared this with me, but she said that she was having the hardest time. They were habit training some of the littles, and she was having the hardest time getting them to hang up their coats. And so she just let it be, and she put little treats. I think they were jelly beans, but now I can't remember. Put little treats in their coat pockets, and just waited. Any coat pocket that was hanging up would get a treat. Any coat that was not hanging up would not get the treat. And sure enough, one of the kids stumbled upon their treat in their coat pocket and ran, mom, look what's in my, and all she said with a wink was, good things come to those who hang up their coats, with a wink and a smile. And of course the habit stuck after that. It was just off to the races from there. But that is in almost every one of the video games that our kids, it's the catch and reward. It's the take the moment where you have noticed something that your child has done that you want to reward, that you want to see repeated, that you want to do again. And you just kind of pause and ask, how do we celebrate that moment for just a moment? it doesn't take a lot. It does take presence, but the benefit is when you're not sort of distracted by your own device, and when you've kind of limited sort of your own mental load in that department, you can be a little more present to look out for those things to foster with your children.
That is a beautiful example. I love that. And big tech companies pay billions of dollars to exploit our longings for connection and belonging. So if we have a completely different and wholesome approach, Erin, what are some ways that we can borrow those attractive features from social media to optimize influence within our own home, especially again as parents?
Yeah, from my time as an influencer, it was always very interesting to me to see what would, perform well, I guess is how you would say it. And truly we know now how-to videos perform wonderfully. The more vulnerable you are, the more hits that you would get. So that's why you'll see a lot of people crying in their car, or kind of showing, their closet mess, or sort of spilling a large portion of their guts online. That's not new. That is a very, it's a call for human connection. It is something that we all desire to see people who have shared struggles or who have shared experiences with us and learn from them. So, when we're parenting, if we're trying to kind of earn trust and influence in our kids' lives, if we're trying to be a voice of authority in their lives, it helps deeply if we can approach that from a vulnerable position. If we can talk about things that maybe we did wrong that we wished we had done better, if we can kind of mentor them through some of those stickier times and stickier seasons of life, teaching them new things, teaching them what we're learning, bringing them into that, just like your favorite YouTube personality would do. Again, the surprise and delight, a lot of things that we've covered already, but those really matter. And then just, from a practical standpoint, I do not think that it's an accident that the posts that perform well in terms of a brand sponsorship deal, or that, when you think of styling a photograph for Instagram or for any social media platform, you're not just going to show a book, right? You're going to lay the book out, and you're going to have a cozy blanket nearby with maybe a cup of tea. And it's making a family unit into a series of experiences that you are in it together. I'm not saying that you have to style everything, in your home, or that you have to kind of prepare this immaculate environment, but fire pits, looking out at the stars, being in the fresh air. I don't know very many brands who don't photograph their products outdoors, or at least with the daylight setting. It's more appealing. There are just things built into our human nature that really do trigger that connection between people, and boost our brain development and help us to be more present. And those are all things that we can do as families. Those are things we used to do in the family, a good old fashioned water balloon fight, or playing with the hose, or any of those, fire, water, earth, soil, any of those Waldorf elements from early childhood. If we can recreate those, we are going to be well positioned to create that environment of delight and of comfort in our home.
That is great. And that especially sticks out with the how-to videos being the number one, and just how it is such a gift to have somebody teach you something, and that we have opportunities daily to do a how-to with our children. And another way you've summed it up is to be responsive, rewarding, and revealing. So that alliteration helps. But then also on page 254, you write, "Our homes reflect our habits." So, Erin, what other ideas do you have for using our homes to strategically build family rhythms where all of the members can grow and flourish?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you think about the way that you're setting up your home, it's kind of the same way you would set up your pantry, right? Like when if you don't want to encourage nonstop eating of cookies. You're going to have your little cookie stash up higher than what's right in the front. So I would just say, when you're creating a home that supports your family's habits, and there's a lot in the book about how to define those. How do you define your family values, and how do you define your family culture and all of that? But once you've sort of established what that is, make those things top line, make them front and center. If you really value reading books, then integrate a home library, no matter what. Make every bedroom have shelves all over. If you really support exploration and outdoors, build that time into your calendar. Make sure that the weekends are open for free play outdoors, or for a hike, or a swim in the lake, whatever it may be. It's just a matter of working rather than, what the algorithm does is it sort of gives us a passive state of options, right? We're handed all of these things that we could be doing, this, and this, and this, and this. But when you're working from your own sort of family culture, and when you're working on your own algorithm path, to lead you to a place that does support your values, well, you go first, right? So you just prioritize everything else, and then there's no room left over for whatever the algorithm wants to show you. You prioritize what you want to do and what you value. And there are many ways to do that. Reading and outdoors, those are really big ones for our family. But I know many families that prioritize entrepreneurship, and so they do a new project in the weekends, or some really prioritize community service. So they're out at the soup kitchens every Saturday morning. It's truly what real life experience can you offer to your child, so that when they walk out the door, they have a sense of, this is what we do as a family. This is what we do together. This is who we are. That really does support their identity as it shapes into becoming an adult.
Well, and you give freedom with those options, but I do love how your family focuses on reading aloud and outdoor time, because those are proven to be healthy and beneficial for all humans. And even one quote that you write on page 255, the research is clear. Kids who spend more time outside are calmer, learn better, and sleep better. And even your simple follow-up idea for building a habit in your home is the after-dinner walk as a family. So I just love how attainable that is.
Yeah, of course. And these are all things, if you think of habit stacking, these are all things where you when you're thinking of integrating a new habit, just add it onto something that you're already doing. You're going to have family dinner already. So just throw on your shoes and just try it out for just one after dinner. And then maybe it's 3 to 5 after dinners. And then maybe it's every night after dinner. But slowly building the habits from there, because these moments are our child's memories, and we want them to be in a spot in the future where they can sort of look back and recall those feelings of childhood. What did it feel like? That is something a phone can't provide. There's no feeling attached to it. It's just content, and we want connection.
When was the first time you listened to an episode of The Savvy Sauce? How did you hear about our podcast? Did a friend share it with you? Will you be willing to be that friend now and text 5 other friends, or post on your socials anything about The Savvy Sauce that you love? If you share your favorite episodes, that is how we continue to expand our reach and get the good news of Jesus Christ in more ears across the world. So we need your help. Another way to help us grow is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Each of these suggestions will cost you less than a minute, but it will be a great benefit to us. Thank you so much for being willing to be generous with your time and share. We appreciate you. Can you also tell us about the TMM challenge?
Oh, yeah. So what I do a lot with my kids, actually, this is kind of a universal phrase you can use in a lot of different situations, but TMM is just tell me more. And what I noticed with when in early parenting, I would tend to just sort of spew out a lecture or two when they would come to me with a problem, or if they needed advice or if just anything that was happening, I was locked and loaded and I was ready to go. But I found that they really just needed my ear and not so much my words. And so I would just use the simple phrase, tell me more. So if they come in and they say, this thing happened, and okay, tell me more, rather than jumping into solution mode, right? So it's another layer of, again, I think one of the goals for us as parents is to really fight that surface level information that the internet learning has really given us. A lot of ed tech feels very surfacey. There's not a lot of room or time for depth. And so if we can teach our kids in their own communication with us and with each other to really mine for the deeper meaning behind things and to give ourselves the space to have those conversations and to prioritize their words and the meaning that they're interpreting from those words, that's really, really important. So instead of just jumping in right away with a solve or a quick fix or a distraction, I like to start with tell me more to really better understand and approach the angle that my kid is seeing this from.
I love that. It's so memorable and easy to implement. But let's continue to get even more practical. So merging your background as an LA stylist and design blogger with your current passion to disconnect online in order to connect deeper in person. Will you provide us with some tips for curating our home to actually give our family the rich content technology promises, but rarely delivers?
Yeah, I mean, technology is so good at curation. That's why it works so well. There is a lot of information online, and Google does a really good job of curating what it wants you to see. So we could do that as parents as well. Walking through your home and editing out anything that's unused or forgotten, anything that's broken, curating a space that feels as if it supports your values. I talked about libraries or beautiful art on the walls, things that we're all drawn to beauty and goodness and truth. And I think we seek that out online. I think it feels really good when we see a pretty picture online, but it feels even better when we live in that pretty picture. And whatever your taste or style or budget or is, you can find ways to implement that. We are almost always at the thrift store when we're in need of something new. And we're sort of swapping things out by seasons. We use a lot of nature in our decorating. We use a lot of poetry, some written by my kids. If your kids create a lot of artwork, put that front and center, encourage that habit to create, not just consume. I think too, William Morris is one of my go-tos in terms of keeping a lovely home, but he just always has said, never keep anything that you don't believe to be useful or beautiful. And that's really it, form and function, right? You need both. But ideally, you would have form and function. You would have them both at the same time rather than just something's pretty but useless and something's useful but not great to look at. So thinking about how you're incorporating that, I think that's a really good way to sort of fight the instinct to purchase what you see from the magazine or purchase what you see from the Instagram reel, because you recognize, well, I could probably do that on my own with just a little bit of rearranging and finagling right here in my own home.
That is great. And how you bring elements of nature in, and going back to how you said even library books strewn around. Do you have any recommended books for adults or for children as examples of good replacement content?
Oh, gosh, yes. Well, I have lots of book recommendations. It depends on the age, but I always revisit the classics. We do a lot of Beatrix Potter. We love C.S. Lewis. In my home, I actually really like to read my kids, recognizing that our family path looks different than most. I like to read my kids books that really foster independence standing out from a crowd. I think of Caddie Woodlawn or any of those adventure stories where there's someone who is up against a world that looks very different. We just read Pilgrim's Progress and loved that as a family too. But family read alouds, I think when you're looking at the type of book to read, I would think about what issues or character, tricky points in your child's life that you're seeing, and just integrate that into your family read aloud time. It's a really simple way to address some of those things because you can often see something in a character that you can't see in yourself. And so I have a book called, you've probably heard of this, Honey for a Child's Heart, Gladys
Yes.
Hunt. And I often just go through and I just highlight the ones that we've read. But I like to borrow a couple of those at the library each week and just keep them on hand and see which ones fly with the kids. It's definitely a trial and error. Not every book will be loved, but you start with some really good quality literature, and I think they kind of lend into that direction later.
Oh, that's so good. And just kind of summing this up as well, when you're talking about curating our home, I want to highlight another quote that I've heard in the Charlotte Mason community. That's kind of our philosophy that we follow for homeschooling. But you credit it to Joseph Addison, who was a 17th century English poet. And he says that everyone needs 3 grand essentials of happiness: something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for. And I feel like that's one of the ways you've just brought examples even into your book in this conversation of how we can cultivate our family culture around some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful pillar to work from.
Mm-hmm. Well, then rather than making opt-out an all or nothing thing, what is one practical step that any of us could take today if we're even just opt-out curious?
My favorite tip and my favorite step, this is where I started, was, and this is available on optoutfamily.com/tip. And what you do is if you have a smartphone and you just want to experiment with what it's like to just have it not be dinging and buzzing at you all the time, or if you just want to experiment with what it is like to move through the world in a way that your kids will eventually be moving through the world if you're not opting for smartphones, is you just turn on all the parental controls on your own phone. So it's not even turning off the notifications, but you are just making your smartphone into a dumb phone. And we walk you through how to do this. But the other thing, I think that's a very simple shift to make, the parental control feature on yourself rather than your kids. I think that's really beneficial. But the other thing I did, and this actually made a really big difference in supporting that, was I made my phone, the wallpaper in the background, I just turned it black. And what that did was it depersonalized the phone entirely. It became a phone, not my phone. And so it just sits, it's like a landline now. It just sits on the kitchen counter. It's available if the kids need to make a phone call. It belongs to no one. It doesn't have internet. It just has phones and messages, and it's just a phone number where we can be reached. And without that sort of family photo or favorite Bible verse that you see on the wallpaper, without that, it's just been demoted to a tool entirely. There's nothing personal. My life isn't on there. My life is actually out here. And I would start there. I would just turn that black and just see what happens, see what it does, and that little friction point in your brain that says, oh, something's different here. I'm going to treat this thing a little differently now.
Ooh. Erin, you are such a creative soul, and I love these ideas. I've never considered anything like that before, but you did start to mention a website. So is there any place that you would recommend if we've really enjoyed this conversation, we want to learn more from you? Where would you direct us?
Well, I'm not on social media, of course, but we do have a website, optoutfamily.com. And one of the best places to get it, there's a newsletter. We keep everybody up to date on sort of latest tech challenges and how other parents are incorporating some of these ideas in their home. But one of the things that I'm really passionate right now is if you go to optoutfamily.com/join, we have a co-op program, and it's free, but it's co-opt out. And you can just register to launch or join a chapter in your hometown. We have, at this point, over 215 chapters globally. So we have 14 countries, all 50 states in the United States. And the idea is it's a multi-generational co-op. So you are merging lots of different people from lots of different perspectives, and everybody is passionate about this idea of what technology is doing to our children's generation. And the idea is by merging all of those age groups, the young will keep the old young, and the old will keep the young wise. And we can kind of swap tips about, okay, what did we do in the 80s? What did we do in the 70s? How did we navigate this in the 60s, 50s? Nothing is new under the sun. We know that. And so if we can really gain some wisdom from the people who have walked this longer than us, I'm on board for that. So it's a really beautiful program. And it's available and free to anyone at all. So optoutfamily.com/join, and it's called Co-opt Out.
Wonderful. We'll add links, as we always do, to the show notes for today's episode. And Erin, you may already be familiar that we're called the Savvy Sauce because savvy is synonymous with practical knowledge. And so as my final question for you today, what is your Savvy Sauce?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I don't know if this counts, but a new habit I'm forming is that if I want my coffee in the morning, then I have to drink 2 big cups of water first.
I love it.
And that's it. And it's ever practical, but it's keeping me hydrated from the get-go instead of just kind of waking up bleary-eyed and pounding the caffeine. So if anybody else struggles with that, I highly recommend.
That is such a good idea. Like I said, you are so creative. You're also so kind. And I love these ideas that you've shared because they spark delight. So thank you for inspiring us to opt out of technology and to opt in to something far better. It has been such a joy to host you today. And I just want to say thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me.
One more thing before you go. Have you heard the term gospel before? It simply means good news, and I want to share the best news with you. But it starts with the bad news. Every single one of us were born sinners, but Christ desires to rescue us from our sin, which is something we cannot do for ourselves. This means there is absolutely no chance we can make it to heaven on our own. So for you and for me, it means we deserve death, and we can never pay back the sacrifice we owe to be saved. We need a Savior. But God loved us so much, He made a way for His only Son to willingly die in our place as the perfect substitute. This gives us hope of life forever in right relationship with Him. That is good news. Jesus lived the perfect life we could never live and died in our place for our sin. This was God's plan to make a way to reconcile with us so that God can look at us and see Jesus. We can be covered and justified through the work Jesus finished if we choose to receive what He has done for us. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. So would you pray with me now? Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to take our place. I pray someone today, right now, is touched and chooses to turn their life over to you. Will you clearly guide them and help them take their next step in faith to declare you as Lord of their life? We trust you to work and change lives now for eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, you are declaring Him for me, so me for Him. You get the opportunity to live your life for Him. And at this podcast, we're called the Savvy Sauce for a reason. We want to give you practical tools to implement the knowledge you have learned. So you ready to get started? First, tell someone. Say it out loud. get a Bible. The first day I made this decision, my parents took me to Barnes & Noble and let me choose my own Bible. I selected the Quest NIV Bible and I love it. You can start by reading the book of John. Also, get connected locally, which just means tell someone who's a part of a church in your community that you made a decision to follow Christ. I'm assuming they will be thrilled to talk with you about further steps, such as going to church and getting connected to other believers to encourage you. We want to celebrate with you too, so feel free to leave a comment for us here if you did make a decision to follow Christ. We also have show notes included where you can read scripture that describes this process. And finally, be encouraged. Luke 15:10 says, "In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The heavens are praising with you for your decision today. And if you've already received this good news, I pray you have someone to share it with. You are loved, and I look forward to meeting you here next time.